The talk is servicing a game using feature-driven DLC and to do with what content and features should be delivered to a game as it goes on. My name's Dave Burrows. I come from Liverpool and I support Liverpool Football Club. For the last 9 years, almost 10 years, I've been with Sony in their studio Liverpool doing Wipeout. I was the technical director on HD and started off with Fusion and Pure as the lead programmer of that. And yes, it got outstanding for IGN. And also what I did as lead programmer for Pure was I developed the DLC system that was used for Pure that eventually was brought in to be your PSP for Sony, and generally brought DLC to the PSP platform, and probably one of the first games to do it for handheld anyway. And that system carried on going until HD, basically. The same system works in HD. Generally I left, my last day was on Friday. So generally I'm starting up another company on my own called Big Boffins, and I've had some very interesting conversations about what that means and about what Americans think that is. But generally a boffin is it comes from 1940s British term, and it's the guys who broke the Enigma code, basically. It's a highly technical scientist or mathematician. Now, I will put these slides up on my blog, which you can see there, and my email's there, and I'll remind you of that at the end. I'll probably do it tomorrow morning, so they're not there at the moment. So what I want to talk to you about is the general idea of a launch. At the moment, what we think of as a launch of a game is this. It's a moment, it's a specific moment in time, and we throw it out to the public, and it shoots up in the air, and hopefully it doesn't explode, but travels a nice trajectory and does its plan. And this can be indicated by roughly, I'm not too sure, my vertical axes on most of my graphs are a bit ambiguity. So we have some development, and the development stops, and the sales start, and there's a definite before and after feeling to it. And that's what it was like that. But nowadays what we have is we have DLC. Now I'm classing DLC, although it's downloaded content, I'm classing it as anything basically you add. So it's patches, it's content, it's new service features, new system features you add to your game because trophies come out or whatever. So it's not so much that you've got a launch anymore. It's more this idea that the developer services this launch period. And this obviously is, I've set it up here for the idea that development will eventually end, but we're now moving into the stage, a lot of us have moved into the stage of a developer creating a service. So what the general gist of this conversation is with digital distribution, the development does no longer end at launch, which we all know and love for various reasons. So I've split my talk up into three sections. The first section is products and services and adoption and how they get adopted, which, I'm expecting quite a few people to know that, but it's a brief recap. The next one is game feature classification, and then the third one is sort of like merging these two ideas together to optimize your feature delivery according to the adoption of your game. So the first question we have is how are products and services adopted? This has generally been termed something called technology adoption, and splits up into two sections. It splits up into the technology adoption life cycle, which is concerned with when people adopt, and then the adoption process, which is concerned with how they adopt. And both of these ideas and models come from Iowa State University. In the late 50s did a study on how hybrid seeds are propagated throughout Iowa farmers. I particularly like the picture because I imagine the guy with something above the camera so the horse turns. I don't know what. But, so yeah, this guy was Roger Everett Rogers, and it's in a book called Diffusion of Innovations. It's up to about the 5th edition at the moment. It's still valid, totally valid. And he states that the adoption of technology goes through a 5-cycle process. And it starts off with innovators on the far left, and then as the life cycle of the product or service or game or whatever goes ahead, different people take on the product. So it goes innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, then finally laggers. Should be fairly well known. And he defines the general idea of what each section are as innovators love technology, early adopters welcome technology but want the benefits, and the majority, early majority, welcome technology, avoid risk, late majority, not comfortable, and laggers just will never use it. So he basically says that 16% of people, for whatever reason, it could be monetary, it could be just that they hate your product or they find something else. It varies drastically depending on what product you're talking about. Won't buy your product, won't buy your game. So that's when people adopt or who they are adopting your product. Next thing is how they adopt, and this follows a 5-stage process as well. And it goes from awareness. Obviously, there is a moment in time when somebody doesn't know about your product, and there's a moment in time when he does know about the product. And how he finds out about the product is the first stage of the adoption process. The next thing is he says, oh, that sounds interesting, where do I find out more? After finding out more, he sort of mull over it in their mind and go, right, okay, that sounds all right for me. They then go, oh, I'll test it. This could obviously be a test drive or go to a shop and have a look. And then finally goes, yeah, that's the one for me, or that's not the one for me. Then we get some interesting stuff if you merge the two ideas together, the when and the hows. So what I've done is I've dropped off laggers, because basically laggers are against you all the time. They just hate your guts. They just there's some very strange ideas of why laggers don't do it. But you can follow it from vertically. I'm not going to go through it all, but generally it goes from left to right, that the innovators and early adopters are very self-aware, and not self-aware, the opposite. They're self-confident, and they think that it's all to do with I want to do this and I do this. And then the majority of people, they want things to be pushed to them, basically. So you can have a read of this later, but it's quite interesting just to see how it changes. I did an interesting trial of this, which was, when I was still at Liverpool, I sent an email round, and this is admittedly, I sent it around to about 30 odd people, and this is in a games company, and I was expecting to get only really innovators and early adopters. However, what I sent round was sort of like, how do you first hear about a game? How do you find out more about a game? And then how do you evaluate it? How do you then pick to see what it is? And each vertical slice of this, each vertical column, is one person's response. So I haven't actually messed around with it or merged them. So hopefully you can see the late majority is a bit off, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the innovator, this is a renderer guy. And he buys games just purely to see the rendering. And he knows about it beforehand. He's on all the blogs about rendering. He obviously takes part in the blogs and the forums. And he'll be the one in the shop on the day of release. And he gets it, plays for it for about 2 hours, and then bins it. And this is purely because his interest is in rendering. The adopters, it's very interesting that, the early adopter doesn't take part in the blogs and the Twitter feeds and the forums and stuff, but they still know where to go. They're still talking about Eurogamer and specific websites, so they're sort of still in the niche market of games or the in crowd of games, yeah. The early majority, sort of like you're now beginning to see that he's no longer going after to find the new games. What he's waiting for is the people to come to him and say, "Oh, this is where you find it. This is what you should be playing." And what I was saying about the late majority is that obviously in a game studio it's very hard to find a late majority, i.e. somebody who doesn't really want to know about games, but they'll do games when they come along. But what I picked here was this girl specifically for the evaluation is so reticent to try other games in her answer. She's basically saying, look, I know what I like and I'll try something from this other studio, but it's going to be a hard push to me to get somebody I don't know to get onto me. Yeah, so it's slightly different than the early majority, where he's a bit more open to what he's willing to accept. And this dichotomy between the two sides, the innovator, early adopter, and early majority and late majority, produces this idea of the adoption of two halves, which you might have heard of. And it's shared because the innovators and early adopters share similar sort of methods of how they go about finding things and how they evaluate things. They're very innovation and gadget-led, and sort of like at the forefront of technology, whereas the majority of people just want to be told what to do. And also, the trial is different. The people on the left will want to work at it and try really hard to get it working, whereas the majority of people just want one click. They're not going to hang around for you. And this produces what's called the chasm, which and this is why companies find it very hard to go from a small company to suddenly ramp up to a big company, because the people they're selling to is totally different. And this was detailed in a book called Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore, and he suggested using new marketing techniques on the internet to get around this. The talk isn't about this. The book suggests advertising and new release and social networks and reviews and easy install. This was game or software specific, and this was detailed last year by Ryan Dancy, called Network, and he did a GDC talk called Network Marketing, which was very good. How his company was using all the social networks and all the blogs to hit different types of people, to try to push the innovators and early adopters to feed the majority of people, and to get them to come to you. And he suggested the way to do this was social networks, which is right nowadays. So that's the general gist of the technology life cycle. But generally what I'm thinking about is, saying we're going to use social networking and stuff that marketing can do or the company can do is great. That works. I'm fully up for that. What I'm going to concentrate on is, we've got this life cycle and we've got this changing early adopters or changing adoption people. And we've got this state where the early adopters, the people who buy our game first, aren't going to be the same type of person who's going to buy it sort of like 6 months down the line on that long tail that Chris Anderson talks about. So what features do the early adopters want and what features do the late adopters want? Sorry, the late majority want. So if I'm going to be talking about features, obviously the best thing to do is try to find a model that fits the features so we can start talking about it. We've got a model for the users, and we can say, innovators, and we all know what that means, or early adopters, and we all know what that means. So is there a model out there that can match our features and classify them with the customer needs, basically, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fulfill the needs of the customer. And there is, which is lucky, because otherwise the talk would end there. And it's called the Kano model. And this was developed in the 80s by this guy here, who's a professor at the Tokyo University. And he basically he spent his whole life looking at customer satisfaction Quite a lot of it has been to do with service industries. Hotels use this quite a lot, and leisure industries, like Disney or something like that would be using it quite a lot. And it's to do with how product development, or how much development you should do for a particular feature, and then what that feature, how much satisfaction a customer would get from that feature. Yeah. And he splits up the type of features that you can do, or the needs of the customers, into three. The first one is quite simple. It's a basic need. And he considers this as the cost of entry. Generally, it's what you have to do just to be in the same ballpark as anybody else. In games, it would be, you have to have some sort of 2D display or 3D display or something like that. You'd have to have input, something like that. And it's expected, it's assumed, it's generally, you could also think of it as what the customer, when he sees your product, it's something that is at the back of his mind, yeah? Which sounds a bit weird, but it's something that you just expect it's there, okay? So, for instance, if you go into a hotel room and you walk in and you see the bathroom like that, then that's fine, and you know, what's wrong with that? But if you walk in and it's like that, then you go, well, okay, I've got a problem there, yeah? So what that's done is bring a totally expected need, something that you don't even consider or don't even think about, which is at the back of your mind, straight into the forward mind, and you're down at the reception saying, a moving room or a moving hotel or something. Now, equally well, if you then went into the room and they swapped your room and said, oh, I'm sorry, very sorry about that, and you saw that, you go, well, that's a bit too far. That's not what I was thinking, okay? So this also shows another side of the basic need, or the hygiene need, they're called as well, is that you can't really get over-satisfied with them. Unless you've been on a heavy night out, you're not really, that's too far, really. Yeah. So the next classification of a need is a performance need. And these are things which are definitely at the forefront of your mind. If you go out and do any market analysis, or go to forums about your game, or go anywhere else, just go to the street and say, how do you want a better phone? They're going to immediately say a longer battery life, a bigger screen, sort of like better reception or something like that. And these are classed as performance needs. And they are at the forefront of the customer's mind. He's expecting these things, and he's always expecting version 2 of your game to be better than version 1. That's it. And the hotel equivalent would be something like room size. And again, this is the case of, unlike the basics, where you can overdo them, but there's no point in overdoing them. In this way, yes, if you've got a hotel room the size of this room, you'd be overjoyed. You might think, okay, that's a bit strange, but so you can go. You've got sizes here from a micro pod hotel in Tokyo all the way to a luxury room. And the third and final classification is what's called excitement. And these are needs, features that are the buzz, or the wow things, or the hidden things. And these differentiate your product from anybody else's product. So obviously, these are the ones you want to go for. But equally well, they're very hard to find. We're talking about the vision that you have for your product. These are needs which aren't even in your customer's mind at the time. So you have to either try to work out what they want. A very good idea is if you're doing a Facebook game, is all the metrics that you collect. You can actually gather hidden needs from those sort of metrics, and maybe watching your users to see what they do and things like that can give you these hidden needs. 20% of my users are clicking 20 buttons all the time to do this one thing. If I produce one button to do this, then that means 20% of the users are going to go, oh, that's great, they've satisfied a need I didn't know I had. And the hotel, sort of like equivalent to this, is if you go into a room and you find free champagne, which admittedly hasn't happened to me yet. Okay. So this is great. And what you can do is you can map these three types of needs onto a two-dimensional grid. So we have the first dimension, which is the need fulfillment, of how much time you've spent on it, or how well you've done. Generally, the two equate to one, two equate to each other. The second dimension on the vertical axis is how satisfied the customers are, and it goes from irate to delighted. And yeah, so this changes. So if we plot the basic need on there, what you have is it goes from heavily dissatisfied. If it's not there, then they're going to be mega annoyed, to up to fulfilled. And they're sort of like, yeah, okay, that's there. It's there. It's what I expected. But it's flat. So you can never. It doesn't matter how much time you spend adding development to a basic need. Eventually, you get to the stage where there's no much more satisfaction to your players you can give them. That's it. The other side is performance, which is spoken. This means that, yes, if you do produce a bigger screen, if you do produce more polygons, if you do produce better renderer, blah, 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 then eventually, yes, you'll get people going really, really excited about your product, and it's fairly easy to do that, or at least you know what to do. Whether it's easier to do is another matter. And the third is the excitement. And these, because the customer isn't really even expecting it, this means that if you actually perform any amount of the excitement, he'll be overexcited. He'll be more excited than anything else you've done. And these are very easy to do. And also it shows that it's very easy to get high satisfaction from an excitement feature with less development time or less input than, say, a performance or something like that, or a basic, which you can't even do. And these degrade over time, which is interesting in itself. So this means that when you produce an excitement feature, your competitors will pick up on it, and they'll go, oh, that's a good idea. And what they'll see it as is a performance feature, because they'll have to beat you. And then eventually, once everybody in the industry does it, all the players will think, oh, well, I'm expecting it. So it'll become a basic need. So you always have to look after the excitement needs. And this we're generally seeing in rendering. Go back to Wipeout, as I know. Wipeout 1 was renowned for its rendering, even though it had pop-up and it had non-perspective correct textures, and everybody loved it. And then we did Fusion, and Fusion, we weren't desperately concentrating on the rendering. It was sort of I just expected that we did it, and we tried to do a bit better than everybody else. And yeah, HD came along, and yeah, the WoW was back in there, but even now you can look at it and go, well, near enough every game on the console, on Xbox 3, PS3 or anything, or PC, requires that sort of standard of graphics. If it isn't that, then it must have some other WoW feature or some other thing that it's going to differentiate itself with. So the question in your minds, hopefully, is so which features are which? And there is a fairly easy way to classify your features. And this is done by having a functional question and dysfunctional question. So you basically create a survey, and you create a functional question which says, how do you feel if this was present? Or a dysfunctional, how do you feel if it wasn't present? The answers you give the people are these 5, and then you plot them on a grid like this. And this goes from, you can see the excitement features should be in that corner. I'll go through exactly how it works. The performance in the top right, basic features. The indifferent is, well, if you do a feature like that and you perform it well, you'll probably, they won't really be that bothered. You'll be in the middle of the graph. So yes, it's up to you, whether you do it. Questionable means something very strange has gone. They're basically saying, if your question is about, multiplayer, and they go, well, I'd love it if there was multiplayer, and then they go, well, I'd love it if there wasn't multiplayer, and you go, well, that's no data there. And the reverse is basically your customers are saying that whatever you think is wrong, do the opposite. So it's you think that there shouldn't be multiplayer, and you've asked them, do you think there should be multiplayer, and you're expecting it to be up there, and it's not, it's down there. So and you generally do the questions, you follow the line across, so your functional question would be, yes, I like it, go along there. Dysfunctional question, oh, it's neutral. And it goes, oh, well, it's an excitement feature. So, for instance, multiplayer have said if they come back and say, I expect it to be this way, which is highly likely. How do you feel if multiplayer racing is not present? I dislike it this way. And generally you'd get a load of answers which roughly go around there somewhere. And it would say multiplayer racing is a basic feature, which pretty much we all know. I just realised this was, sorry. So what you end up with is all your features that you've come up with through listening to consumers, going out there, surveying, people playing it, obviously doing competitive analysis. You'd have all these features, and you go, right, okay, which one's which? Create these questions, massive survey, put it around the office, maybe get some people in, get some players in, give it to them, and you'd end up with multiple choice, plotted on the graph, plotted on the table, and you'd have this sort of thing. So you'd have a load of basic, a load of performance, and a small amount of excitement. So the general summary to that section was that if you come up with a feature, the satisfaction that the customer would get from that feature, that specific feature, is not necessarily the same satisfaction that you would get from feature B or another feature, which is fairly obvious, but hopefully this gives you quite a good model that's been well used to maybe start thinking about and certainly talking about what type of feature is which. And maybe what percentage you can use them. So we've got all these. So the next question is, we've got all these features, and we've got some idea of the people who are going to be playing our game and in which order they're going to be playing them, the innovators, early adopters, the life cycle of our game, which is given to us by these two models. So what happens if we merge these together? And what can it tell us about what innovators want and what the majority want? So I'll start off by moving the technology, taking the technology adoption graph, dropping the laggers because they don't care about us, so why should we care about them? Put a bit of development in, and that's the order in which we're going to do them. Now, a naive approach, and one which I've seen happen quite a lot, is to build up. Generally you build it up. This tends to happen in big projects where you've got to end 2 or 3 years in advance, and you're not concerned with servicing or releasing as you go or something like that. But the general idea of this graph, and just to explain my vertical axes, which are very strange, is that for any n month into development, you're generally looking at this sort of split of needs, which is roughly whether that's launching or developing is a bit ambiguity, but we're talking about years here, so I'm not concerned. So the first thing I would say, and I would expect everybody in the room to say, is that yes, okay, in development you have to be doing everything. You want to cover your basics. You want to, obviously do the excitement and do a bit of performance needs as well, and just be rolling over. The first thing you hit is the innovators. Now the innovators get excited about technology, so what you should be giving them is what they want, basically, which is excitement needs. That's what they want, so why don't you give it to them? The next people you hit is the early adopters. These get excited by technology, but also for the benefits. Now, benefits suggest that they want to actually play the game, or they want to use the service in some way. So, yes, they'll quite happily help you do your job and feedback bug reports. And, yeah, if your install system isn't as good as it should be, then they'll get around it and do the many clicks. But they want to actually use the product and they're willing to fit the life around the product, but they want it for the benefits, basically. The next people you hit is the early majority. These require low risk, and they require the happy users. As suggested by Ryan last year, yes, the innovators and early adopters should be, helping the early majority by, feeding your forum posts for you and creating a nice society to be seen with, because obviously the early majority want to be happy users. They'll join a crowd, basically. Yes, they'll put up with some excitement, some changes to the product, but they really want a stable product. And then the final people, which is basically when you're ramping down, is the late majority want a mature product. They certainly don't want any changes to the product. They just want to use it. So this is the final Kano feature delivery graph. And it follows it. As I said, the vertical axis is a bit iffy. But generally this seems to be a more logical way to do it. That it fits quite nicely into certainly some sort of Facebook game where you want to try to get your innovators to tell you exactly what your product problems are, and then you do your content later. And this, I vaguely think this is where the whole idea of DLC came from, basically. That's why it's called DL content, downloaded content. So the summary of this is that, which is very simple, your launch product shouldn't be the same as your mature product. It should have changed. You should have a simpler install process. You should generally look at all the weaknesses that the majority of people want and target them, basically. They don't want to be hanging around waiting for it to install. Very quick. So the final summary of this is generally I looked back and had a look at various changes that have been in our industry over the past years and seen how well this fits. And certainly the whole life cycle obviously is for products in general. So the hardware changes have been like this. So hopefully you can go away and look at this and go, right, okay, so what's happened here at the Nintendo is the excitement features came in at the start, and with the DS, the double screen, they went for an excitement feature. It was a wow. It was nobody, I think, had it in their mind that they wanted a double screen before they saw that. Yeah. And then as the product matured, what they produced was a performance feature, which is a bigger screen, and probably better battery life. I think it does. The same goes for the PSP, and the evolution into the PSP Go is that its battery life has got better. It's a performance feature. It's got smaller and lighter, so you can carry it around, which is probably something that was certainly at the forefront of everybody's mind when they first picked up the new one. It was very heavy. So yes, certainly hardware is going that way. The other side of it is interface changes. So you can also look at these and go, okay, these are excitement features, but what they really are is they're really addressing the evaluation and the adoption process that the majority of users have. The innovators are quite happy to use the controller and to have a very dislocated, I suppose. A very weak link to the games console or the game in general. Whereas what these are doing is lowering the bar of accessibility and addressing that majority of things. And basically, they're trying to get over the hump of the chasm. This also goes with kernel changes. This general feeling of moving towards Twitter and Facebook and obviously BBC iPlayer, things that we want and the majority of users know about, shows that what they're really doing is addressing the early and late majorities and their concerns and their need to be in a pack of people that they know, basically. And the idea of music videos and Netflix, I put that up there just to give you get you thinking about these are non-game services, so they're trying to move away from specific core gamers. So we're gradually getting towards software. So software changes. World of Warcraft obviously uses this quite a lot. They have the initial WoW feature was obviously that you could play the game, which is frankly amazing at the time in general. And it's gradually changed. The launcher came in, which made it far more accessible to new people to get in there. It made it easier to send out invites to your friends, which meant that the majority of people who expect uptake from their friends, they don't have to go out and find games to play themselves, could get it that way. And also they address some issues to do with people getting bored and using their mounts to get around. So they introduced this a reduced, what do you call it? You could get the amount quicker, basically, so you could move around the world quicker. Excuse me. So the final, and let's be a bit quick, the final summary to all this, which is very simple, is this basically. Innovators and early adopters need an exciting game and excitement and cutting-edge features, and early and late majority need an accessible game and expect performance features and low risk. And it's very simple, and hopefully, I'm not expecting you to go away and go, oh, I've never thought of that at all. What I'm expecting you to hopefully go away with is with the Kano model and the names that you can now give to things. And certainly if you show this to a designer and say, right, okay, maybe we should start classifying all our needs or our features in the game to do this, so that just as people go away and say, right, okay, this product's aimed at innovators, you can then go away and have conversations about, well, this is really a basic need, so once we've achieved what we want to achieve, we'll just leave it on the back burner and make sure it's not buggy at all. Or this is really excitement need, and we need some of them in the game, and maybe if we have 10 more of these, or maybe root down and really go for some excitement needs, then the game's going to be much better at the start. So hopefully it was fairly quick. But yeah, as I said, the slides are up they will be up on my blog tomorrow. There's my address as well, my email address. Please fill in the survey forms, and I'm open to questions. Thank you. Yes. No, good. Not that I know of, no. Sorry, the question was, can you cite any console games that have used that method? No, what we were doing before I left Sony, we were going through the studio group, which is in the northwest of Liverpool, and I was doing this presentation to everybody there, basically. So the idea of the Kano model is gradually propagating through Sony, yes, I know that. And it's just a nice, simple model to have something to pin on the ideas that you have originally for a game. And dare I say, it's not rocket science. It's just a nice model to do with. Well, hello. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Generally, I suppose the summary to that question would be how does it directly relate to console games, and you spend 2 years doing a game and then releasing DLC. Generally, there's two sides to that. Generally, one thing I've seen in console game development is that you do the naive approach, and you do think, oh, let's get the basics going, let's then add some tracks, and then finally let's add some wow features to it. And what ends up happening then is that the wow features just get dropped off, as development never goes to plan whatsoever. So that's one thing which I'm certainly saying is that that big red blobs going from the far right into the middle of development is definitely needed. The other side to do with content is that's generally what I'm saying is that I could see coming to the stage whereby a console game should be delivered with less content and then more content later on. Is that what you're saying? I think the innovators and early adopters will love it. Yeah, I think it's this whole process, and it shouldn't really just be developers. It should also be marketing, and it's also there's some bits in there to do with talking to your consumers as well. So if your consumers know that's what you're doing, and you're almost giving the consumers the right to affect the content that comes along as well, which they'll love as well. But we did try this. We tried it in Pure. There was far less content than we wanted to do originally because we just didn't have time to do it because it was a launch PSP title, and that's vaguely why we did all the DLC packs afterwards, and we got very good reception from that. Yeah. Any others? No? Can I go to the bar now? Cheers. Thank you.